The New Gate. It's the most advanced VR MMORPG. Here you can do almost anything you can imagine in a fantasy world. You choose your unique character with its unique race, and also play with friends, or you can become a blacksmith to forge legendary weapons. But one day, this dream fantasy turned into a death game. Players dying here meant dying in real life without an option to log out. Shin is the legendary player who is fighting till the end for freedom. Shin says goodbye to his NPC followers, one last time as he's leaving to defeat the final boss. His NPC's wish give good luck, but as expected of a last boss, it's not easy to beat, and it can regenerate itself. But with much struggle and self-confidence, Shin was able to beat the final boss. As the final boss was defeated, the game system awarded Shin with a few fancy titles and announced that players can log out again. To see if players can really log out, Shin double-checks his players list. And to his delight, players are logging off one by one. He makes sure that everyone has logged off before he logs off. But when he decides to log off, the gate behind him opens with a bright light, blinding him. And suddenly Shin finds himself in a grass field. He wonders if he's still in the game, but feels it's too realistic for a game. He tries to open his stat window and sees that defeating the final boss, all of his statistics went up by a ton. He checks for others, but there is no network. He tries to log out, but there is no option. But he's mad that after defeating a death game, he's now Isekai to another world. But he figures there is no point whining, so he decides to go home to his checkpoint. He takes a sprint. On the way, he sees a town and wonders when they built it. After running for so long, he finally reached his destination, the Moon Sanctum. In front of the house, he sees a girl arguing with some men, but they don't listen to her. They try to forcefully take her, but she has a curse which attracts monsters if she leaves the premises of the house. A wild boar appears, and the men run away, leaving the girl behind. But Shin comes in to save her. Then we learn that the girl is Tiara Lucent. She asks if he's her master's acquaintance. Shin is confused as to which master, but Tiara says everyone knows Shuni Razor, the Moon Sanctum's acting proprietor. Shin realizes that Shuni is one of his supporting characters from back, and because of her, the Moon Sanctum's is still standing. He asks where she might be. Tiara says that she can't tell Shin, as she doesn't trust him, but she can relay a message which will cost 1,000 Toadler. Shin says that he only has gils. Tiara is surprised, so see that he has gil currency and an item box, and both of them are pretty rare. Item box are only available to the high class. A gil is so valuable, it can be exchanged for 1 billion jewel. Shin is surprised, cause gil was the lowest form of currency in the game. Shin further explains that his race is high human, shocking Tiara even more, as high humans went extinct ages ago and there are only humans. She explains further that in the 500-year-old event, the sunset of prosperity, the high humans, and many people disappeared. Shin concludes that it happened when Shin defeated the game. As a thanks for giving Shin relevant information, he wants to give the Gale coin to Tiara. But Tiara is perplexed as to why someone would hand out something so valuable. Confirming Shin won't ask it back, Tiara takes. Shin says that as an elf, the coin will help Tiara with magic. But Tiara questions how Shin saw she was an elf, as Shuni cast an illusion spell to hide her identity. Shin wonders why a beauty would want to hide her identity. Tiara explains that elves with black hair are cursed. Her village was attacked by monsters, so she was banished. Shuni saved her, and due to the barrier around the shop and illusion cast on Tiara, she was able to stay there safely for 100 years. Shin questions if there is no cure, and Tiara says there isn't. But then Shin remembers about his analyze skill. Using it, he finds out how to solve it, and applies Purify on Tiara. But Shin apologizes, as only part of her hair reimagined its color. But Tiara was actually more than happy and shed tears. Shin then suggests going outside the barrier. He assures her he'll tackle any monsters. She slowly walked out, holding Shin. Seeing the beautiful horizon, Tiara started to cry from how beautiful it looked. We then cut to the Moon Sanctum. Tiara says that Shuni won't be back for a while, so Shin wants to explore the city. Tiara then gives Shin an introduction letter, saying it'll help him pass easier. Shin asks if she should be giving him this, but she says it's okay, but it's nowhere enough to pay back his kindness. Shin arrives in front of Bayerlicht Kingdom, and easily enters, skipping the massive line. Shin reaches the Adventures Guild to sign up. The receptionist directs him to the upper floor. Shin is shocked to see the same person upstairs, but they are twin sisters. Signing up, Shin goes to a restaurant to order and meets Celica, who works there sometimes too. She sat down with Shin, and after inquiry, she says she wants to know about the authenticity of his introduction letter, but says he'll do it, but doesn't want to meet the guildmaster. But the guildmaster was sitting behind Shin all along. We then move to the guildmaster's office, where we learn the guildmaster is Marluk's Heim, and he immediately gets to the point of inspection. After confirming its authenticity, Shin is mesmerized by the process. Guildmaster then explains about the letter in detail. It can be used to bypass the border of most countries and used to request an audience with the king of a country. It holds such power, so Marlux warns Shin to make sure it doesn't fall into the wrong hands. And Shin assures Marlux he'll live up to the expectations. Then we cut to an inn Shin has booked for the night. He recalls his tiresome day and goes to sleep, wondering when Shuni will be back. The next morning, Shin goes to the guild office to receive his guild card. Celica comments on Shin's new gear. He says it's for better mobility, but actually it's to avoid attention and stay low-key. Shin receives his guild card, and Celica explains that SS is the highest rank and G is the lowest. He can accept quests 2 ranks above his own. Shin accepts the job of picking hilkweed and starts his task. But in the woods, Shin encounters a skull-faced Jack wielding a holy weapon, which was odd. Shin attacks it, planning to take him down. But his weak sword gets chipped. So Shin lifts his limiter and defeats the skull-faced Jack, dashing towards it. The skull-face dropped a gemstone and Shin picked it up. But the sword of the skull-face went flying towards the royal palace, crashing into the princess's room. The princess orders to call an appraiser to check the sword's materials, and thinks to herself that whoever threw that sword must be super strong. Shin returns to the city and sees some injured people, and asks a knight about them. The knight says they were attacked by a skull-faced Jack. Shin connects them to the wrecked carriage in the woods. The knight also informs Shin that a sword was thrown towards. Upon hearing so, Shin's face goes pale. Shin is glad no one was hurt, but feels a bit guilty. Shin goes to the guild to repot something, and notices a commotion in the guild. Celica confirms it's due to the skull-faced Jack. She asks what Shin wanted to report, and he says that he defeated the said skull-faced Jack and looted a gemstone from him. Celica went pale in absolute shock. She said it's not just anything you can defeat. Shin says it's interesting to see a calm person like Celica to lose composure. Els comes from behind, telling Shin to teasing Celica. Celica explains what Shin said to her, and Els is equally shocked. Shin say he doesn't have any proof except for the gemstone, and he didn't retrieve the weapon because they didn't think it was worth it. Shin asks if monster often spawn in the forest, and Els says that given the number of deaths, it is a monster hotspot, but it's not a place of a Jack tier monster should spawn. So Shin believes it was an outlier, being above level 300. Both girls are shocked that it was above 300. Shin further says that it was 359 to be exact, so both are even more shocked to hear it was 359, so Els asks to appraise the gemstone to confirm it. Shin expresses that he didn't know you could do that with a gemstone. Els sighs as to how Shin is so unconcerned. If what he says is true, he is stronger than an A-rank party. But Shin requests Els to not reveal that to anyone. Shin then heads to the restaurant to have dinner, and Celica escorts him to a table, but says he'll have to share it with someone, and Shin doesn't mind, but is happy to have some company. The person sharing the table with Shin is Wilhelm Avis. Everyone seems to be afraid of him, but Shin is unfazed. Shin notices Wilhelm has a legendary weapon, mythical spear venom. Wilhelm and Shin introduce each other. Wilhelm guesses Shin is a newbie, and Shin says he started 3 days ago. And so Wilhelm says that is the reason Shin isn't afraid of him. Shin says there is nothing to be afraid about Wilhelm. So Wilhelm provides insight that his alias is Wilhelm the Vampire. But Shin says it's because of his skin complexion, which is pale. But Wilhelm says it's because of weapon venom, which drains life force and gives it to the user. People are afraid it will drain them. Amidst their conversation, their food arrives, and they decide to eat. The next day, Shin heads to the library to research the current times. But he doesn't find anything useful and concludes that the world, except for the disappearance of players, hasn't changed much. We are then shown the scene of Marlux disusing the matters of the Skullface Jack with a few people. It has been proven that the Skullface Jack was 359. Marlux wants the soldiers to be vigilant if there are others. The Women Black says there were other Skullfaces, but they were King Tier, not Jack. The knight is interested in the person who defeated the Skullface Jack. But Marlux says he can't disclose the information as per request. The knight says that the Skullface Jack was defeated the same day the sword flew into the princess's room. The sword is powerful as the royal, so what person didn't want to take it? Marlix says that people with introduction letters are, and there is no point dwelling in that. But they can't simply forget someone this strong, and there is a problem. We then cut to Shin eating meat skewers. A girl was staring at him, so he offered her skewers, and she ran to take one. Shin wonders if she's as lost. The girl thanks Shin and introduces herself as Millie. Shin offers to escort her, but Wilhelm arrives at the scene and Millie runs towards him. Shin asks if it's his kid, but Wilhelm denies it and says she ran from the church orphanage. Wilhelm was surprised that she got close to somebody given her shy personality. Wilhelm says they are going back home, but before leaving, Millie whispered to Shin about saving something and left with Wilhelm. Back in the inn, Shin was wondering why Millie told him about saving someone. But Shin figures that as long as Shuni isn't back, he has nothing much to do. He heads to the moon sanctum to meet Tiara. Shin wants Tiara to relay a message to Shuni. He first wants to confirm that Shuni hasn't forgotten him, so he tells Tiara to deliver a weapon of Shuni. Tiara got an ominous feeling from the weapon, and when Shin said it was due to the monster parts used in the weapon, Tiara was shocked upon hearing the names and expresses that common sense doesn't make sense when she's with Shin. Shin pulls out some envelopes and says to Tiara that if you write your message and the receiver's name, then say send, it will be sent to the recipient. But he's unable to send on to Shuni, so Tiara will have to take care of. Tiara wants a few for herself, so Shin gives a bunch as payment. After Shin left, Tiara realized that she could have sent a message to Shuni right there and then. Shin is now in the North Forest. There, a voice tells him to go away. Shin figures it's a barrier, but due to high-level mind manipulation, won't work on him. Going further into the forest, Shin finds a shrine. The mind manipulation was gone, so Shin figures this is the center of the barrier. He enters the shrine and finds a fox inside. He picks it up to see that it's cursed and poisoned and about to die. So Shin hurriedly heals it. He then hears a sound, and upon checking his map, sees multiple hostile targets. So, holding the fox, Shin pulls out a spear and defeats all the monsters. But then 2 statues at the gate turn into 2 invaded golems of level 674, covered in black miasma. Shin uses Shadowbind, but they cover the surrounding in dark fog and break free. In the darkness, Shin sees the fox's platform, shinning and standing upon it. He can see around him. He uses Archbind to hold them, and Piercing Thrust of Devastation to finish them. The surroundings are now normal. Shin says the creature is a little fox, but checks to be sure, and to his surprise, it's an Elemental, the highest tier monster in the new gate. But he didn't. There was a cub version. He decides to take the cub with him, and the cub climbs on his head. Then in the distance in a horizon, we see Shuni receiving a magic envelope. She is confused as to how Tiara got them. Opening it, she is shocked, realizing it's a relay from her master.